Chapter 101. At this moment, Wenzel and Ernesto visited Earl. They brought up the reunion held 2 days ago at one of the city's most luxurious 5-star hotels. Wenzel felt bad that Earl didn't attend it because Faye had also been there that day. At the party, Wenzel had announced that Earl was this year's top scholar in the state, which had immediately caused a massive uproar in the crowd. The classmates' expressions had been nothing short of dramatic, riddled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, Wenzel had felt a sense of pride when he had announced the news. It felt as if he had stood up for Earl. Back then, Earl was seen as a burden in school, someone who held everyone back. Faye had also publicly rejected him in the past. Wenzel described the look on Faye's face at this point in detail. It was nothing short of spectacular. It was a shame that Earl couldn't attend the reunion. Wenzel and Ernesto felt it was a waste. As they were happily talking, the atmosphere was suddenly disrupted by the honking of a car horn. Not far away, a black Mercedes gleamed under the sunlight, exuding an understated elegance. The car door opened, and a middle-aged man with an air of authority stepped out. Then, a beautiful and radiant lady followed behind him. Her waist-length hair fluttered gently in the wind, leaving everyone breathless at the sight of her. It was Faye and her father, Silas Bautista. Faye's grandparents still lived in the old part of the city, and Faye's family would come and visit the old folks during the festive seasons. Just then, Faye saw Earl and the others from afar and greeted them. "Hello, everyone. What are you guys talking about?" Wenzel and Ernesto went over to greet her. After all, a beautiful lady would always attract a man's attention. However, Faye only had eyes for Earl this time. Her once indifferent and prideful expression had now become more friendly and warm. "Earl, why weren't you at the reunion 2 days ago?" she asked softly while looking at him with a gentle gaze. Earl stood tall, his handsome and resolute face glowing brilliantly under the sunlight. Admiration flickered in Faye's eyes. She hadn't seen Earl in 6 months, and seeing him now, she felt an array of emotions for him. "That's something to attend to, so I couldn't go." "Oh, I see," Faye said, smiling gently. "I heard you're studying finance at Alnugo University. Why didn't you come and hang out with me? We're in the same city." In the past, Faye would never say something like that as she was prideful and reserved. But now, she was being so friendly and warm toward Earl. Perhaps Earl was no longer as insignificant as he used to be to her. Earl half-jokingly said, "Oh, yeah. I was afraid that you'd say you didn't know us if we asked to hang out." Faye shook her head and showed a charming smile. "That won't happen. I'll give you my number. We can hang out together after the semester starts. If my memory serves me right, Bianca is also studying at your university. We can ask her to tag along too." Her voice sounded soft and sweet as she spoke, like a gentle breeze. Earl gazed at her radiant smile, and a thought crossed his mind. Perhaps this was the charm of growing up. It made people who were once strangers grow fonder of each other and people who were once familiar grow even closer. After Earl saved her number, Faye mentioned Luca Lazzaro, a famous student in the School of Finance. She said Luca was a reputable figure in the university and asked if Earl knew him. Earl nodded, indicating that he knew him. Chapter 102. Then, Faye smiled and said, "I thought you might know him. He competed in the National Youth Vocal Showcase and will participate in the national finals with me. My mentor said that Luca is talented and that he's highly regarded by many reputable experts." Earl didn't say anything else, but Ernesto, who was beside him, jumped in surprise. "Faye, I can't believe you actually made it to the Youth Vocal Showcase finals." Faye nodded. Though her face revealed little emotion, a faint sense of pride stirred within her heart. After all, something like this would indeed be a surprise to someone like Ernesto. Perhaps it was because this was an achievement that Wenzel and Ernesto could never hope to reach in their lifetime. Wenzel asked curiously, "What's the Youth Vocal Showcase?" Ernesto looked at Wenzel disdainfully and explained, "It's a highly prestigious competition. I heard the satellite TV station will broadcast the event live during the regional finals. Those who make it to the finals will usually go on to become stars in the music industry. A bright future lies ahead of them." Wenzel nodded, realizing Faye might be on a journey to stardom, growing further apart from the rest of them. Faye did not say much. She only stole glances at Earl, eager to know if he was shocked by her accomplishment. Looking back on the past, Earl's roguish charm and rebellious allure would sometimes make Faye's heart skip a beat. However, Earl's family background and previous academic standing had caused a proud girl like Faye to avoid him. She never expected Earl to suddenly rise through the ranks and become the top scholar in the state. She never expected Earl to suddenly rise through the ranks and become the top scholar in the state. Now, the reason why she was telling Earl about her entering the finals was to show him that although he had succeeded in his academics, she was still an untouchable queen. She hoped Earl would continue to work hard and follow in her footsteps, but perhaps he would only ever be able to catch a glimpse of her back, if even that. The winter break was relatively quiet. Earl saw Samuel and Jenna's public displays of affection on social media and Belle's travel log of delicacies and breathtaking sceneries. Everyone was living their own lives. The holidays passed by quickly. After the winter break ended, Earl said his goodbyes to his family and headed back to the university with Wenzel. Wenzel had originally wanted to ask Faye to join them on their journey to AI Nugo. However, when he learned that Faye had already gone to the city to attend some special training classes and visit a few reputable mentors to prepare for the upcoming Youth Vocal Showcase finals, he gave up on the idea. Wenzel could only sigh at the vast chasm between them. While they were buried in their studies, Faye's life had taken flight. It seems that Faye would become someone that they would spend their entire lives looking up to. Immersed in their own thoughts, they journeyed through the falling snow, accompanied by the steady sound of the moving train. Finally, they arrived at Alnugo. After exiting the train, the two went to have dinner and indulged in a couple of drinks before returning to their own worlds. Isaac, Samuel, and Joshua had returned to campus too. Just like Faye, Luca had arrived at the capital earlier to prepare for the Youth Vocal Showcase finals. He was now making the final preparations for the upcoming competition. Isaac had also returned to the campus earlier to take care of some private matters with Miranda. Needless to say, the private matter was expected to be good news. Samuel was excited to see Jenna. While Joshua was troubled by his fight with Queenie, Samuel privately revealed that Queenie seemed to have found a new beau, someone from a wealthy family with significant power and influence. However, Earl didn't pay too much attention to these trivial matters because something more important was waiting for him. The mobile game, Panzer Saga, that he and Patrick had developed had finally been launched. It was available for download on all major platforms. Chapter 103. But reality was somewhat cruel. Among the other minigames launched that day, the ranking position of Panzer Saga was not ideal, leaving them disappointed. After all, they had invested almost all their fortunes on this game. Their investments would go down the drain if the game didn't rank high enough. However, Earl wasn't discouraged by this. He tried the minigames that were at the top of the ranks and found that the playability and player retainability weren't as great as that of Panzer Saga. This made him realize that the rankings were not a true reflection of the game's quality. The two began discussing ways on how to improve the game while planning their next marketing strategy. After a thorough discussion, they decided to split up to find a solution to the problem. They believed that as long as they persisted, Panzer Saga would succeed. Earl returned to his dorm. He researched some information in depth and carefully examined the top-ranking games, where he gradually discovered some unusual signs. It turned out that almost all of the top-ranked games had many 5-star reviews, but Earl found it odd that many of the usernames for these reviews only had a string of random letters and numbers in them. They looked like fake accounts created to boost the game's reputation. Then, he accidentally discovered several identical accounts in the comments section, leaving him more convinced of this. This wasn't the case only with the top-ranked games. Many newly launched games after Earl's showed similar signs. The thousands of comments and reviews seemed to have come from only a handful of usernames. They were manipulated. In stark contrast, though Panzer Saga had not received many reviews, the reviews seemed more genuine and in-depth. Many users described their amazing experiences with the game in detail. Guided by his doubts about the rankings, Earl began to search for relevant information online. Eventually, many things became clear to him. Earl wasn't dejected after learning the truth. On the contrary, he was proud that his game could still maintain its ranking without any manipulation, which demonstrated its potential and appeal. At night, Earl called Patrick and explained the reasons for the low ranking of the game. He asked if there were any systems that could help them improve the game's rank. Patrick's hands were tied, but he said that would inquire about this matter. As Earl and Patrick were discussing how to market the game, Samuel entered the dorm. Samuel asked awkwardly, "Earl, can you lend me some money? Living expenses have been a bit tight lately." He explained that the money was to pay for an unexpected living expense. Earl knew that Samuel had spent a lot to pursue Jenna, so he didn't say anything else and just gave Samuel the money. It was late at night. As Earl lay in bed thinking about ways to market Panzer Saga, he was suddenly woken up by the loud ringing of someone's phone. It turned out that his dorm mate, Ronnie, had set an alarm for an event in Panzer Saga. Earl felt a stir in his heart at Ronnie's excitement, and it boosted his confidence greatly. The following day, Earl explained to Patrick in detail about the developments of the game rankings. Patrick frowned deeply. Although he had dabbled in the realm of game cheats, the complexity of game marketing and promotion still felt foreign to him. In fact, he was less experienced than Earl in this area. However, he had built an extensive network from years of being in the gaming industry, so he immediately contacted a few friends in the industry to gain an understanding of how game recommendations operated. Apart from the game's exceptional playability, securing a spot on various ranking lists required investing funds in recommendation slots or relying on the game's inherent potential to attract the attention of recommendation providers. Behind this mechanism was a profit exchange between the game developer and the recommendation providers. The more popular the recommended games, the more profit the recommendation providers made. However, the current game recommendation market was monopolized by major mobile phone game developers. So, it would be challenging for Panzer Saga, a game that had insufficient early promotion and was behind in the rankings, to attract the attention of these recommendation providers. Earl and Patrick were caught in a tough spot, as they needed hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing funds. Chapter 104. Although boosting the rankings through artificial means could quickly elevate the game's ranking position, the investment it required was substantial, and the results were far from guaranteed. Seeking collaborations with recommendation providers was a far more direct and effective approach, but the costs remained exorbitant. After thinking long and hard, Earl and Patrick decided to partner up with a recommendation provider. Earl sorted out the remaining savings, while Patrick contacted major recommendation providers. First, they focused on mobile phone game developers specializing in game rankings and recommendation slots. Still, due to the lack of experience networking with such large corporations, they repeatedly hit dead ends, unable to secure a meeting with any department directors or supervisors. After trying to contact several large mobile phone game developers, they redirected their focus to the country's most reputable game recommendation providers, GamePod and TaterGames. Fortunately, these companies' headquarters were located in Alnugo, which made it convenient for them to communicate face-to-face. After making an appointment, the two of them successfully got an opportunity to meet with the relevant people in charge of both companies. At GamePod, they met with the manager, Jude Sinclair. Jude was shocked at how young Earl and Patrick were, and a hint of contempt flashed in his eyes. However, Earl and Patrick weren't discouraged. They patiently introduced the unique selling points and potential of Panzer Saga, and expressed their interest in a partnership. Even though Jude behaved coldly toward them, they had no choice but to suck it up because they needed help. During the meeting, Jude asked about the recommendation fees. Earl and Patrick suggested a reasonable price based on the company's financial standing. Trying his best to maintain a smile, Patrick said, "Our company will pay the recommendation fees based on the agreed contract. I believe that as long as your company recommends the game we've developed, the results won't disappoint. Plus, we can increase your company's share ratio by 20%, based on the original profit-sharing amount." How does that sound? Jude went straight to the point and said, "We're not concerned about the share ratio. We'll recommend your game as long as you can afford to pay the price. However, Promises like yours usually only apply to games that don't have much market potential. Patrick was speechless at Jude's words. Finally, he asked with difficulty, how much will it cost to buy a recommendation slot? Different recommendation slots are priced differently. The price is $200,000 monthly for a recommendation slot on the second page. This is the lowest price we have to offer. Patrick fell silent. He and Earl didn't have much savings left. They were left with no more than $50,000. They couldn't even afford the cheapest recommendation slot. Noticing the embarrassed looks on their faces, Jude smirked disdainfully. You don't have the money, huh? Then, come back once you have the money. After saying that, he stood up and got ready to leave. But Patrick stood up anxiously and said, Mr. Sinclair, we're currently low on liquid funds. Perhaps you can recommend us for now, or we can pay for half a month's fee first. How about, do you think we are a charity organization? Jude rudely interrupted Patrick. His tone was impatient as he continued, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now. Without hesitation, he got up and walked toward the door. Before he left, he said to the assistant by the entrance, from now on, don't set meetings with small companies like this. It's a waste of time. Who knows what kind of trash game they've developed? They might ruin our reputation. Then, Patrick and Earl were thrown out of GamePod. Chapter 105. In the afternoon, Earl and Patrick arrived at TaterGames. This time, a capable and physically attractive lady named Isla Winters greeted them. She held no prejudice against Patrick and Earl. On the contrary, she admired them for their entrepreneurial spirit at such a young age. However, it was still a business. According to TaterGames company policy, the game recommendation rankings were usually updated once a month. When Earl indirectly expressed they wanted to improve their ranking but had insufficient funds, Isla furrowed her eyebrows slightly. Troubled, she said, based on the company's policy, it'll cost $180,000 per month for the lowest recommendation slot, but I can help you get a 20% discount. However, at the very least, you must buy the slot for half a month. If you're looking for less than that, then I'm afraid I can't help you. Isla had tried her best to negotiate for the lowest price. She had a good first impression of Earl and Patrick, especially Earl, whom she found likable, so she didn't hesitate to offer them a low price. However, even so, it was difficult for the two of them. After spending their savings on developing the game, Earl and Patrick now only had $50,000 in their bank accounts. This was $30,000 short of the $80,000 fee for a half-month slot. Earl and Patrick said they would find a way to get the money. Then, they left TaterGames helplessly. Previously, the two of them had earned a considerable income, and $50,000 would have been a piece of cake for them to get. However, developing Drakengard games had required a substantial amount of funds. Although Earl's earnings from his online songs copyrights were stable, he still had to wait another half a month for the next paycheck to arrive. By then, Panzer Saga would have lost its popularity. Patrick said suggestively to Earl, Earl, I think Isla has eyes for you. That's why she gave us such a low offer. Patrick was more well-versed in the market trend. According to the market price, it couldn't be this cheap. Earl laughed and said, have you lost your mind from always thinking about girls? Patrick shook his head, saying, I'm serious. She was looking at you with so much admiration. Why don't you try giving it a go with her? It'd be even better if you could borrow some money from her. Earl felt that Isla's gaze toward him had indeed been somewhat ambiguous, but he shook his head and said, you'd better not have any ideas about me. I'm not a gigolo. Since Earl wasn't on board with the idea, they had no choice but to continue discussing how to get $30,000. Then, they left to devise a plan separately. After returning to the campus, Earl received a call from Luca that night. Luca was about to participate in the Youth Vocal Showcase Finals, but due to the large number of contestants, there would be a few eliminations rounds before the finals. The competition strongly emphasized original songs, which was why it attracted significant attention from the audience every year. Those who could get into the top 3 or top 5 would usually make it big in the entertainment industry and secure a name of their own. Luca was the most popular contestant representing Calisota, so he was under immense pressure. A song from one of the unassuming contestants had unexpectedly skyrocketed to the third place on the Billboard Hot 100. It was a remarkable achievement that left everyone astounded. Such an achievement was a miracle in the music industry, as there had never been a phenomenon like this in the history of the industry before. Although Luca's song did not threaten Soul's position, it was still a remarkable achievement to skyrocket to the third place. Aside from the legend, Soul, Luca had surpassed numerous well-known celebrities in the industry. He had even undermined the new song by Faye's mentor, Donald Cannon. Luca's achievement was so spectacular that he became the center of attention and became an overnight sensation. But the resulting pressure also made Luca feel anxious. He needed to demonstrate his capability to secure his position. However, he wasn't satisfied with the lyrics and tunes he had written recently, so he called Earl for help. Chapter 106. To Luca, Earl was like his mentor, and he only trusted Earl. Earl agreed to help Luca and guided him in singing his new song over the phone. He also pointed out some areas of improvement in the lyrics and composition of the song. They chatted for nearly 2 hours. Luca felt that he had learned a lot from the conversation, but he had to unwillingly end the call since it was late at night. The following day, Earl woke up and realized that it was snowing. When he was getting ready, his phone rang. It was Bianca. Earl's heart fluttered slightly, and his mind wandered to the pure, immaculate figure that was both graceful and elegant. He recalled his first meeting with Bianca at the basketball game last semester. After that, Bianca was offered the opportunity to join a student exchange program at Brightland University, and he hadn't seen her since. He never expected Bianca to call him after such a long time. Earl suppressed his excitement and answered the call. Bianca's gentle voice came through the receiver. "It's me, Bianca. How have you been, Earl?" "I'm doing great. Are you back from Vicksburg?" Earl asked. If she were still in Vicksburg, she wouldn't be using her old number. "Yeah, I just got back," Bianca replied gently. "Earl, can you help me? I have a lot of luggage." Earl agreed and asked, "Where are you?" "I'm at the campus entrance." "Wait for me," Earl said before ending the call and sprinting to the campus entrance. The roads were covered in thick snow, so there weren't many passers-by. When Earl arrived at the campus entrance, he saw Bianca from afar. She was dressed in a pink down jacket and a fluffy hat, and her silky hair cascaded down to her waist. She stood under a tree, looking poised and elegant while exuding a captivating beauty. Snow had already accumulated on her fluffy hat. It was obvious that she had been waiting for some time. There were several suitcases next to her, and there were indeed too many for one person to carry. A few guys mustered up the courage to come forward and offer to help her, but Bianca politely declined them all. She only wanted Earl's help. When Bianca saw Earl, a radiant glint glimmered in her eyes. She didn't reject Earl's help when he picked up her luggage, and Earl noticed the heartbroken expressions on the faces of the guys around them. "Thank you, Earl. I'm sorry for troubling you to help me with my luggage," Bianca said, smiling as she blinked her beautiful eyes at him. The two talked while they walked. Earl asked about Bianca's interesting experiences at Brightland University, and they got along really well. Before they knew it, they had arrived at the female dorm. Although Earl still wanted to linger in the moment, he was too embarrassed to express it. Bianca said, "Thank you for helping me with my luggage, Earl. I'll treat you to lunch. I haven't properly thanked you for your help in the past too." Earl saw through Bianca's intentions. He smiled and waved his hand, signaling that there was no need to be so polite. "We used to be classmates. There's no need for such formalities." Then, he realized that Bianca's hat, clothes, and hair were all covered with snow. It turned out that when Bianca was holding the umbrella earlier, she had tilted the umbrella toward Earl, leaving herself completely exposed to the wind and snow. Chapter 107. A surge of inexplicable emotion welled up in Earl's heart. He mustered up the courage to gently brush off the snow on Bianca and said softly, "Look at you. You forgot to cover yourself with the umbrella. Let me help you brush off the snow." When Earl touched Bianca, her face instantly turned scarlet. The sudden, intimate gesture left Bianca flustered. However, she didn't reject Earl's kindness and only lowered her head slightly. She then said softly, "So, I assume you've agreed to having a meal with me. I'll put my luggage away now, so please wait a moment." Earl nodded. Being able to have lunch alone with a lady like Bianca was a dream come true for him, so he had no reason to reject her offer. Not long after, Bianca came downstairs, and they headed to a restaurant with an elegant ambiance and exceptional cuisine. This restaurant was next to the campus basketball court. Earl remembered that this was the place where he had first met Bianca. Back then, Bianca had been standing under the streetlight while he and Isaac had competed against each other. The two momentarily locked eyes, leaving Earl feeling as if he had traveled through time and space just to meet Bianca again. After sitting down, Bianca mentioned that she had seen a guy who looked very much like Earl at the basketball court last semester. At that time, that guy shot a three-pointer. He seemed familiar, and we even made eye contact that night. But then he turned and left after that, so I assumed it wasn't you. Earl smiled and said, "It was me." When Bianca heard that, her eyes flashed with surprise. Then, she asked with a hint of reproach, "Why didn't you talk to me then?" Earl felt cornered by her question. He couldn't tell Bianca about his worries and concerns at that time. Back then, Bianca was a popular and radiant person, while he was a nobody. It wasn't the best time for them to meet. Bianca was intelligent and discerning, so she seemingly understood how he felt. After a moment of silence, she gently asked, "Earl, if hadn't met you at that basketball game, would you not have taken the initiative to contact me?" Earl quickly shook his head and denied it. "That wasn't the case. I just thought I needed to find a more suitable time to contact you." After hearing this, Bianca sighed softly, seemingly displeased with Earl's answer. However, she didn't pursue the matter further and changed the topic. "Earl, I've always wanted to thank you for saving me back then." "Bianca," Earl interrupted her and said sternly, "that matter is in the past. Anyone who saw that would have offered to help. If you mention it again, I'll be angry." Earl didn't want Bianca to feel burdened by this incident. When gratitude became a burden, it would change the nature and purity of their friendship. Bianca nodded helplessly. Then, she smiled brightly and said, "Oh, that's right. Earl, are you free in the afternoon? I want to recommend you to the campus radio station." "You're part of the campus radio station?" Earl was somewhat surprised. "Yeah." Bianca lowered her head shyly. "I'm the female host there now." Earl's heart started palpitating uncontrollably. His excitement wasn't completely because of the job opportunity. He would feel utterly blessed to be able to spend so much time with Bianca. It didn't matter if nothing happened between them. He considered himself blessed just to be able to see her every day. However, Earl knew that expressing his eagerness would only make him appear hasty, so he chose a more reserved approach. He said, "I have some extra time on my hands, but I wonder if this is a suitable venture to explore. I'm worried that the show won't achieve the desired results." Chapter 108. Bianca understood the meaning behind Earl's answer, and her smile became more radiant. "As long as you say yes, I'll arrange the rest." As they were having a pleasant conversation, Earl's phone suddenly rang. It was Patrick. On the other end of the phone, Patrick sounded dejected and hopeless. He had asked all his friends to lend him some money, but he still couldn't gather $30,000. Earl comforted him, "Don't be discouraged. I'll find a way." After he ended the call, Bianca said with concern, "It seems like your friend is short of money." Earl didn't want her to worry, so he tactfully changed the topic. "It's a small matter. I'll find a way to help him." However, Bianca was an observant person. She had gathered some clues from Earl's call, but she didn't say anything else. The two of them continued chatting while enjoying their meal, and time flew by quickly. After lunch, Bianca said, "I'm full from all the food. Earl, do you want to take a walk with me?" Earl would never reject Bianca's invitation. However, to his surprise, Bianca suddenly asked Earl to wait for her when they arrived at the campus ATM. When Bianca returned from the ATM, she handed Earl a stack of cash. "Here you go. This is the $30,000 your friend wanted." Earl was shocked by Bianca's generosity. He knew that this amount wasn't a small amount for her. "Why do you have so much money? I can't take this." However, Bianca insisted on lending it to him. Her reasoning was simple. "I overheard your conversation with your friend earlier. I gathered that you're both trying to start a business. This is your dream, so I hope you'll do your best to make it happen." Earl was filled with gratitude. He took the money from her and said, "Thank you, Bianca. I'll return the money to you as soon as I can." A sweet feeling welled up in Bianca's heart when she saw how serious he was. "Okay, don't worry about it. You can just pay me back once you have the money." When they parted ways, Earl couldn't help but turn around and look for Bianca. Bianca's graceful figure was standing quietly at the second-floor corridor's window of the female dormitory. When she saw Earl turn around, she quickly disappeared. Looking at that beautiful back, Earl felt an inexplicable emotion in his heart. At that moment, he knew that this beautiful and kind lady had left a deep impression in his heart. It didn't matter if nothing happened between him and Bianca. That radiant young lady had left an unforgettable mark on his life. Early the following day, Earl contacted Patrick. They brought the money they had gathered and entered the door of TaterGames. Isla kept things brief and quickly arranged for her team to devise a 2-week marketing plan for Panzer Saga. After completing the negotiations with Isla, Earl and Patrick declined her lunch invitation and hurried back to the campus. When night fell, the preliminary rounds of the Youth Vocal Showcase finals began in full swing. As a highly anticipated contestant, Luca was about to take the stage and perform under the watchful eyes of many esteemed mentors and the audience. Alnugo TV was broadcasting the competition live, attracting the attention of countless viewers. Faye and Seth were also participating in the competition. The 3 talented and good-looking young adults were all from Alnugo University, and they were at the forefront of the preliminary rounds. Alnugo TV highly prioritized this competition, eager to capture the contestants shining on the stage. Earl, Samuel, Isaac, Ronnie, and a few other dorm mates gathered around the television in the dorm, eagerly waiting for Luca's spectacular performance. Chapter 109. However, Joshua did not join them. He had grown distant from Queenie due to certain conflicts. Rumor had it that Queenie and Anna had attended an exclusive yacht party during the winter break and were now mingling with people with bad influences. Although Joshua could be reckless sometimes, he at least had his principles. He couldn't accept that Queenie was mingling with such a crowd, which had caused a heated conflict between them. Earl was more concerned about Anna. It was rumored that Anna wasn't just hanging out with them like Queenie. It seemed that she had also found a wealthy boyfriend with a certain status in the circle. However, Earl didn't care that much about it. After all, the two of them had never been in the same circles with him. At 8 p.m., the Youth Vocal Showcase was broadcasted live on Alnugo TV. As Calisoda's most eligible contestant, Luca's performance was highly anticipated. Prior to this, Seth and Fenna had already completed their respective performances. Seth's performance was mediocre, and he had even caused a minor stir when he almost fell down before going on stage. In contrast, Faye caught the attention of the audience and judges with her beauty and stage presence. With her solid skills and magnetic voice, Faye's performance received unanimous praise from the judges, securing her a spot in the second round. When Luca finally came on stage, he had a guitar with him. He sang a moving song with his unique voice. The audience applauded wildly. His performance truly matched his title as Calisoda's most eligible contestant. However, compared to the song he had performed for the finals in Calisoda, the song that Luca had prepared this time was slightly lackluster. Even so, he was still the strongest contestant in the running. In spite of that, when the scores were publicly announced at the end of the program, Luca was surprisingly ranked second place. Nathaniel Blackwood, a student from a reputable university in Lunabria, had ranked first place. Everyone in the dormitory was displeased and disappointed with the results, and they questioned whether the competition results had been manipulated. However, Seth's elimination was expected. After all, it was sheer luck that he had made it to the national competition. Faye successfully advanced to the second round of the competition. When the cameras were pointed at her, she accepted the interview with a flushed face, expressing her hopes and confidence for the future. Everyone quietly waited for the second round of the competition. Although the competition had temporarily ended, discussions about the National Youth Vocal Showcase continued. The next day, various online forums and social media platforms passionately discussed the ins and outs of the competition, and it became the highest trending topic on the internet. Not only did the discussions revolve around the performances of the singers like Faye, but it also focused on how Nathaniel had beaten Luca and taken first place. The netizens felt that Luca surpassed Nathaniel in both lyrical and vocal capabilities, and they expressed their dissatisfaction at Nathaniel getting first place in the first round. Although it was only the first round, the rankings for every round heavily influenced the accumulated scores and the final results. Earl was surprised to see that the Youth Vocal Showcase had such immense influence that it could attract such widespread public attention and debate. It seemed that the champion would really be set for a lifetime of stardom. At the same time, another topic began trending online. Someone commented, "Did anyone notice that Luca's style is similar to Soul's, the Music King?" Another replied, "I would have thought he was Soul if it weren't for the completely different voice. Although he isn't comparable to Soul, it doesn't affect Luca's place in the music industry. He's still my idol," someone else defended. Another said, "To me, Soul is the king of all kings in the music industry, and Luca is the prince." Another commented, "He's no match for Soul, but then again, no one can compare to him." Chapter 110. These conjectures rapidly sparked a heated debate online. Luca's seeming embodiment of Soul and whether he had a relationship with Soul became the top 5 searches on Google's search list. This undoubtedly increased the attention and discussions on Luca's future in the music industry. However, Luca and the lecturers at the School of Music chose to remain silent, allowing the online discussions to continue. They knew that the more elaborate the discussions were, the more beneficial it would be for Luca's future. Although they were clueless about Soul's true identity, given his irrefutable reputation in the music industry, being able to leverage on his influence for publicity was undoubtedly a rare opportunity for them. At the same time, while discussions about the Youth Vocal Showcase had yet to subside, Earl's Panzer Saga had displayed shockingly tremendous results under TaterGames. Recommendation. In just 3 days, Panzer Saga had successfully reached the 4th place on the new games chart, and the gap with the 3rd place game was minimal. Earl was very surprised and pleased with the results. He never expected an unassuming recommendation slot to give Panzer Saga such a huge breakthrough. Most importantly, the game's subsequent performance was even more outstanding. Compared to other games, Panzer Saga had a greater player retainability, with less players leaving. Besides that, the game also incorporated social elements, encouraging players to invite their friends and family to join, creating a solid social network within the game. Through word of mouth and the formation of the community, Panzer Saga surpassed the 3rd place game in just a few days, successfully securing its spot in the top 3 games on the new games chart. As time passed, Panzer Saga rose through the ranks, and eventually, it surpassed the game in the 1st place and secured its spot as the top game. This undoubtedly proved the game quality of Panzer Saga. It didn't matter if it was the TaterGames charts or charts from other mobile networks. Panzer Saga had displayed strong competitiveness and appeal. This was definitely a trendy and phenomenal game. In just a few weeks, Panzer Saga had risen rapidly like an upcoming star. What was even more astonishing was that the number of users had rapidly expanded from merely a handful of people to millions, and it still continued to grow at an explosive rate. This speed left everyone dumbfounded. For the first time, Drakengard Games, a company that was previously not on the radar, made its presence in the industry known, causing a massive stir. Back in the dormitory, Ronnie was obsessed with the game, and he even tried to convince Joshua to play it. "Joshua, have you started playing Panzer Saga? This game is currently trending." Joshua took his phone out from his pocket and opened the game, saying, "Of course. Even my parents are playing this game." Unexpectedly, Isaac jumped out of bed and asked, "Is this game really that fun?" A few girls from the shared dorms are playing it too. Nowadays, when students met each other, they often asked, "Hey, are you building your Panzer?" This had become the most popular greeting. Some were excited to share about their journey as the ruler of their town in the game, while others boasted about the precious treasures they had found during their scavenger hunts. The internet was filled with endless gaming strategies for Panzer Saga,